that I've actually written. So this is what I'm promoting as a free training, right? So this entire piece here, the goal is for me to get people to reach out to me so that I can give them the free training. So this lead is pretty direct because I'm hinting at what it is, right? And so the reason behind my thought process here and what to never ever do when selling your fitness coaching services is the first line of your content always has to be compelling and captivating, because a lot of the time Facebook doesn't show the whole post. So if you want Facebook to actually, if you want people to actually click the see more button, then you have to make your text at the top of the fold super compelling so that people actually want to read more, especially if you have a CTA at the bottom. Why would people, no one's going to see it if they don't even want to read your entire piece. So the reason why I chose this lead here is because it triggers almost fear, right? And curiosity. And a lot of the time, fear and curiosity is one of the biggest drivers to get people to take action. So now I'm pressing on people's instincts, which is like, oh, what to never ever do, right? When selling your fitness coaching services. The other thing I know really well about my market is that a lot of fitness coaches tend to be super weird, or they tend to be really scared when it comes to how to sell. And they're constantly thinking that they're not selling correctly. They're constantly worried that people are going to they're going to come across as salesy or pushy. And so by putting a lead like that in the first line, I really press that button of triggering their paranoia, right? Which is what's going to get people to read the rest of the post. So this entire post is actually slightly different because one thing that I did was I blended in the idea of that popular Netflix show You, and actually incorporated that in my offer right now. So one thing that you can think about whenever it comes to creating content and copy is, what are the trends right now that are happening outside of the industry? Is it like, presidential election? Is it a meme? Is it something super entertaining? Is it a Netflix show? Which is what I have going on here, because writing, like being good at copy and content, is all about finding creative angles in which you can tell a message which is different to everyone else, as well as entertaining. So if your content's always boring, then no one's really going to want to read it. And so the art of it is really tying in what's happening in the real world situation. In this case, it's me tying it in with a popular Netflix show because I want to ride the wave of that and almost kind of making not a parody, but turning it into something interesting that's also relatable, right? But the main thing I want to show you guys is not what I wrote here, but really what I wrote here. One thing that I like to do is to not necessarily use the same words and phrases as everyone else. The reason why is because whenever you're using the same words and phrases as your competitors in the marketplace, then you just end up being compared to, and they feel like it's the same thing they can get a million places. Which is why, if you see what I didn't want to say in-depth training or video or free training, I decided to actually call it a marketing classroom. So for fitness coaches who want to tangible benefit. So the structure of this right now, when I'm pivoting to the actual offer and to introducing the offer, is I've recently made a what it is, but phrased in a slightly unique way for who my audience is, who want to learn how to benefit that they say they want. The most important thing to keep in mind is that it has to resonate with your audience, and it has to push the buttons that are top of mind for them. So imagine if I said, who want to learn how to have a better mindset, right? It's probably not that interesting because my market's not saying top of mind. It's not at the forefront of their mind that they want better mindset. So it's not enough incentive for them to actually want to opt in for the training. So what I put here is to learn how to get more high paying online clients, which is A, what my market is saying they want, and B, outlines the tangible benefit of what happens when they actually get the training. So here, what I did is I gave a reason why. So a lot of the time, whenever you're doing offers or launches or whatever it is, you want to give a good reason as to why you're doing it, or else people are just going to think, well, they're going to assume the worst reason, right? Like, you just want it for the money or whatever. So whenever I give a reason, I like to give two reasons. The first can be more of like an altruistic reason for why you do what you do. And the second reason is more so of a self-motivated reason as to why you're doing what you're doing. So initially people might look at that and they'll be like, oh, well, why would I like admit to having self-motivated reasons, right? Because it builds trust within your ideal audience. Like it builds trust with your marketplace. Like who's going to believe that? I mean, a lot of people, like they're going to be skeptical anyway, in general, whenever you're marketing, whenever you're selling. So sometimes what you can do is you can just call out part of the main reason why you're doing it so that you're able to actually build trust with your marketplace because they can see that you're being honest and upfront and direct and truthful. So this is why I like to give two reasons as to why I'm doing things like this. And here, what I'm doing is I'm stacking the benefits of what would happen once you actually got this training. One of the best things you can do whenever you're teasing whenever you want people to opt in for a certain thing, is to really drive the curiosity as well as be super clear on the benefits of what happens when they actually opt in for that thing, right? So I wrote here, in the classroom you'll discover, and then I put 3 points of 3 things that they'll get. So I'm going to explain to you guys my thought process behind writing these 3. So the first is why you've plateaued in your fitness business and how to scale past side hustle. The reason why I chose this point is because it's very specific to the type of people who I want to attract at this point or in this specific post. So I could have written something like how to scale your fitness business, but that's not specific. So for me in this post, I wanted to attract in coaches who already somewhat had a business, already had a few clients here and there. And so this point is relevant to coaches who already have a side hustle, already have a few clients here and there, as well as this word here, plateaued. Because if you're a super beginner fitness coach in the first place, then this wouldn't resonate with you as much. So whenever you are targeting your ideal audience, the best thing that you can do is to think about what are the pain points that my ideal client has that the people slightly outside of that do not have. I'll give you guys an example of how this relates in the fitness space. If you want to target people who are entrepreneurs and people who are high performers and people who actually have the financial resources to invest in a high ticket program, then you want to make sure you're not necessarily just calling out the generic pain points of, oh, you know how it's like, I know how it feels like when you fall off track on your diet and you feel like every Monday you're back to square one, right? You want to call out the specific pain points and scenarios that bullseye target audience has that no one else has. And so if you're targeting entrepreneurs, it could be something like mentioning the fact that they're busy managing their team, or that they have no time to prep for food because they're busy on sales calls all the time. For example, those 2 points are specific to people who are, well, entrepreneurs that other people might not necessarily have. So just a bit of a tangent there. You want to make sure that you're calling out pains that are really, really specific to your bullseye audience. So the second point here is I wrote the secrets to differentiating yourself so that you can charge higher prices. So this is kind of a claim that I'm making here in terms of how do you as a coach differentiate yourself so that you can, once again, tangible benefit. The reason why I said charge higher prices is because I know that this is something that my market actively wants to learn how to do. And they are also, well, they're aware of it and they also express it. So a lot of copywriting is going to come down to knowing your market like the back of your hand. And what I did here was I also put in an example, right? So in brackets, our clients go from charging pennies to charging $1,700 overnight. So the reason why I'm putting this in is because people are skeptical in general. People are, your market is very skeptical. They've seen a lot of claims in the past. So if you can back up your claims or even just an implied claim with an example, then that's even better. So in this case, if I were to write it again, what I would do is I would even name a specific client. Instead of just saying our clients go from this, I would say something like Ellie was able to go from charging $49 to $1,700 overnight. And the reason why I would have done that is because that further level of specificity makes it all the more believable. So that is why I wrote the second benefit here. Now, the third is our surgic selling system in terms of how to use NLP to sell your fitness services so that your prospects practically enroll themselves. So sometimes what I like to do is I like to add kind of like intellectual property. This is really what's called a secret lead. So if you can neologize a common concept or something that everyone else is saying and present it in a slightly different way that no one else has heard before, then straight away what happens is that triggers curiosity in your prospects' brains because they haven't heard before. And they also feel like, oh, I'm going to learn something I've actually never learned before. And people like new, people like novel, people like things that they haven't seen anywhere else. So if you can coin something that sounds sexy, basically, and is exciting and that people haven't heard of anywhere else, then that's going to really capture your audience. So did this post here. I had a lot of people reaching out to me about that. So now I'm going to have a look at this second example here. But let me know what you guys are thinking. Dan, yes, bumping up those rates. Yes. All right. So I'm going to give you guys another example here of another piece of copy that I wrote and really run you through my thought process behind this. This is more so what we call a piece that shifts people's perspectives. So the reason why it's so important to have content like this is because in fitness, people are bombarded everywhere with the same information. And a lot of coaches, what happens is they end up overemphasizing informational, educational content because ultimately, yes, that's proof of expertise and it's proof that you know what you're talking about. But it's not enough to get people to actually reach out to you, let alone buy from you. In order for you to be able to write content that actually converts into high-paying clients, you need to be able to coach your clients in your content through shifting their perspective and challenging their beliefs, which is what this post is. So if you look at my content as a whole, you'll notice that maybe just around a third of it or a quarter of it is straight up educational stuff that you can implement. But a lot of my content is more so made up of shifting my ideal clients' perspectives so that they can start to indoctrinate themselves with the beliefs that I'm empowering for them to take the action that they need to take in order to reach their goals. The reason why I wrote this piece is because there were a lot of people reaching out to me, and the first thing they would say was, well, how much does it cost? Or what's the price of your program? And what I wanted to do was coach my ideal client to teach them that that's not the way successful people think, and they don't just necessarily make decisions or qualify or disqualify an investment based on the price. So I started with, everyone wants a six-figure business, but they have a four-figure mindset. Now this piece, what I did was I put in a lot of contrast and repetition. And what that does is it can add a texture to your copy. And something that I like to do is I like to use a contrast of like six-figure, four-figure. And you'll see this theme throughout. So that's kind of how I started. You know, you, like I said, you always want your opening line to be something that's interesting, it's witty, it's not boring. So put some thought into it. Second line here, what I did was I used, if you want a successful business, the smartest thing you can do is model the way successful business owners think. So what I did here is I'm getting people to start to anchor their thought process and think about how the people they look up to, how they think before I coach them, right? Successful people, the first thing they think is not how much does it cost. In fact, the price has very little influence on their decision to do something, blah, blah. And then I put why. So what I want to do is, in general, when you're writing copy, especially when you're challenging people, is you want to be able to call out what they're thinking in their brains so that you can actually direct the narrative. So it's almost like being one step ahead of the reader so that you can direct their thought process, which is why I put why. And here is when I really start to coach people on the way they need to think. So the rest of the following sentences, I'm going to show you guys why I wrote what I wrote. And one thing that I really like to use, like I said, is contrast in terms of semantics and words and meaning. So here I wrote like, so many people want something big, but they're only willing to give up something small, right? So we've got the contrast of big, small, expensive, cheap, kings and queens, slaves. So when you're reading this, not only do I have the contrast and words that makes it actually an interesting read and an entertaining read, but I also have the repetition, which is really nice whenever you like to add some sort of cadence to your writing. So I like to put this like line by line because I like each line to actually have a meaning or a point in itself. And one thing you want to do whenever you're writing your copy is to be aware of the line breaks, because that is actually what's going to reflect the pace at which your audience is reading that. So if you read this, you'll see it kind of makes each line is kind of a separate point, but it adds into a bigger overall point, which is that people want something, but they're unwilling to actually pay the price for it, whether it's putting in the work or finances or the mental willpower or the sacrifice. So yeah, I have the contrast here: expensive, cheap, kings and queens, slave, long-term financial freedom, short-term sacrifice. Notice that I'm also really subtly planting the seed of what people should do if they want to actually be successful, which is a little bit time, which comes down to actually leveraging credit or loans or debt to invest in their business, which is what a lot of my market do, especially the most successful clients. So these sentences here, it's almost like the cadence is very similar. So the speed at which you read it and the tone of voice in which you read it in your head is very similar. And then you have a pattern interrupt where it's different. If you want a successful business, it comes down to the way you think and the questions you ask. So just before I go into that, whenever it comes to repetition, I like threes. So they want, they want, they want. So you have the repetition there contrasted with the contrast in semantics and words and meaning. So now once again, I go back into a similar pattern of like, instead of asking how much does it cost, ask how much will it make me? Instead of saying this, ask this. Instead of this, ask this. So notice that once again, I have that pattern of three, right? Instead of asking, instead of saying, instead of focusing. I really like that. I just think that in general, it's got a nice flow to it, which is really important if you want your copy to actually be interesting. And then once again, I go into a similar kind of tactic with the contrast in words. Unsuccessful people want 5-figure months, but they think a 4-figure investment is too risky. So 5-figure, 4-figure. And then I'm contrasting unsuccessful people with successful people. So one thing that's really nice in general that you guys can do is to think about how can you incorporate elements of contrast, especially when you're trying to coach your ideal client in terms of putting side by side the way successful people think versus the way unsuccessful people think. And then this entire piece is very much around coaching my ideal audience on what they need to think and how they should think in order to be successful. But notice that I'm not saying you, like you, like you need to do this, you need to do that, right? Because that can just raise defenses in your market's head. And so they're not going to be as receptive to your message if you're coming at it from a place of like, I'm better than you. I'm like accusing you of being dumb and you need to do this, right? That never really works. Occasionally you can do that from time to time. You can be a bit more hard-hitting, but if you're doing that all the time, especially when you're trying to really break through to them to coach them how to think, then that doesn't quite work as well, which is why I use the word we. We need to fix our thinking before we can fix our business. Not only am I coaching my market on what they need to do if they want business results, but I use the word we because I don't want to say you, right? You can come across as a bit more like I'm better than you, I'm a superior, whereas we implies that, hey, we're actually on the same page, and also I make these mistakes too. And so with the end here, what I did was I just said, if you want to be a leader, you go first, which means investing in yourself before you expect others to invest in you, which is very similar to the entire big idea in this content piece here. What I sometimes like to do is I like to end my content on like a contrast in having two choices that they can make. It's like you can either do this or you can either do that. So it forces the narrative in their heads once again to give them the illusion that they have two choices, when I mean technically they probably have more than two choices. Like they could just walk away, right? But then the way I reframe it is like you can either choose this dumb path to go down, or you can choose this like down that successful people also do. So that's how I like to end my pieces sometimes. So that's the second one. Let me know what you guys think. Let me know what you guys are thinking so far. I'm gonna go through two more pieces with you guys. So, all right. Want results like my clients. This is another piece of copy that is more so the goal. The reason why I wrote this is because I wanted people to opt into it and actually message me for it. So the lead here is another way to start your pieces is to start in a question that makes people scream yes in their brains. So if you're going to start with a question, make sure that you're starting with a question that people can very easily answer, have the answer to. Like, want results like my clients. But I didn't just write want results like my clients, right? I actually gave people a tangible example, which is kind of like an implied promise of what people could get if they actually took me up on this offer. So I also put in the tangible time frame and the tangible financial result. This is powerful for a lot of reasons, mainly because for people to really buy into something, they need to see that they're going to get a tangible result within a tangible time frame. So the closer you can get to showing people how to have a tangible result, like X amount of weight loss in a tangible time frame, like 120 days or 60 days, then the more people will buy. What I like to do sometimes is I also like to put in a benefit as to why people should read the rest of my post, especially because this is pretty long. What you always want to keep in mind is that in general, people on social media, they're just like scrolling, they're on a bus or whatever, right? So people you won't have people's attention. And so if you want people to actually read your entire post, then sometimes the best thing that you can do, or a really good thing you can do, is to put in a benefit above the fold, so above the see more button, so that people know what they're going to get out of reading your entire post and actually investing the time into reading it. Which is why I put, I'm going to reveal exactly how you can get results like these too, and read till the end, so it's a command. And that incentivizes people because they know the benefit of reading the entire post. So the way I delivered this offer here is I started with, I took the angle of like a perspective shift, which is that most coaches think if they want to get more clients, they need to make their prices super affordable, which is something that my market believes. And what I'm doing is I'm also calling out the specific things that my market says, because I know my market very well, and also because I want to show people that I understand them before I redirect them to thinking about it in a slightly different way. So whenever it comes to shifting your market's beliefs, one thing you can do is you always want to meet them at where they're at inside their heads. So meet them at where they are in terms of what they believe, before you then lead them to looking at things in a slightly different way, which is why I said this here. And then I say, yet who else is hearing blah, blah, blah. Notice I say who else. So it's not just, are you hearing this? It's like, who else? It gives them permission. It gives my market permission to admit to themselves like, oh yeah, I hear these things too, because they know that, or it implies that other people are going through the same thing. And so it's easier for people to actually admit to themselves that they have these issues of hearing these things. Once again, what I'm doing here is I'm really empathizing with my market's frustrations. And one of the biggest things that you guys, fitness coaches, that triggers them is when people say they can't afford personal training and then go on to like get wasted on the weekends or post a picture of their new designer handbag, right? I know what kind of triggers my market. I know what frustrates them, which is why I want to show them and almost pace them and call out one thing that they're really annoyed with before I start to shift their perspective. So here I go on to say, do you really think people can't afford $60 a month? Hell no, it's not a money issue, it's a marketing issue. So after that, what I do is I actually talk about, okay, now here's what most smart online fitness coaches have in common. And I use the word smart here because I want to call out the characteristics or the qualities that the kind of ideal fitness coach that they want the results of has, right? So this is what the people you look up to, this is what they have in common. They do the opposite of what these side hustle fitness coaches do. So my market can resonate with side hustle. They can admit to themselves if they know they're in this category. And then the next thing I do is I then show them, hey, the key factor which allows my clients to scale from side hustle to 5-figure months is pricing. I wrote my clients here because I want that implied proof of, oh, it's done and dusted and it's been tested on a bunch of people. Another example of this is if you're going to write how to, one thing that you can do instead of saying how to lose 90 pounds in 30 days is you can say how my clients, because what that does is it implies that it implies that it's done and dusted, right? It implies that you actually have a process that a lot of people have gone through. And especially in the fitness market, it's super competitive. It's kind of saturated. People are bombarded with a bunch of different claims. So if you can make a claim where you show people it's done and dusted already and that it's proven, then people are more likely to be receptive. So then I go into the next point here, which is really actually challenging my market's beliefs to show them, hey, you know what? Instead of what smart coaches are doing is instead of making their prices so low, they actually increase their prices way above what the competitors are charging. And then I have the contrast of the average fitness coach versus the smart fitness coach. So once again, I'm directing the narrative in my market's head who's reading this right now. And most people at this point, they're probably thinking, well, how do I increase my prices and get people to buy higher price points if people aren't even saying yes to my really low rates now? And so here's when I start to introduce the offer. By implementing a system I call the IV enrollment process. Kind of like intellectual property, it's kind of like a secret lead. It drives curiosity. It's something that people have never heard before. And so of course people are interested because they want to find out what this process is that allows them to increase their prices. What I do after that is I actually put in, I put in proof. I put in proof that this process works. Because people are skeptical, right? And so you need to lower that skepticism by demonstrating proof. Which is why I put in this process, how it has allowed my clients to, this is like authority, right, and proof. Raise their prices by, I actually have an example here. So I don't just say raise their prices. I actually put in 10 to 30 times while decreasing the thing they don't want to get a lot of the time. So it's tangible benefit while thing they don't want. Second point is get more people in the DMs by asking how to work with them, which is once again what my market wants and what my market is saying they want, which is at the very forefront of their mind. And then third is really just appealing to people's social status and appealing to people's desire to be significant, which is actually another driver for a lot of people. So what I have here is I have two more tangible benefits that my clients have gotten. And then I also am appealing to people's need to be perceived as superior or significant, which is a bit more intangible, but then it presses on people's buttons to be seen as, you know, in terms of recognition, social status, and things like that. So this is also what we call, it's an implied promise to my marketplace, because I'm not straight up saying, hey, this is going to allow you to do this. I'm saying this is what my clients have been able to do. And then today I'm going to give you my training on this for free. Dun, dun, dun. The reason why I put today is because semantically, it subconsciously triggers an element of urgency, because it's like, oh, just today, right? It's like, today I'm going to give this to you for free. I don't just say I'm going to give you my training. I say today, because it's true. I'm not lying, but subconsciously the meaning associated with that word is that, oh, you might only be able to get it today. And then I really talk up the value. My clients pay me four figures for free. Two reasons I do that. The first is because I want to really trigger that desire of like, I want to position it as special, right? So it's like, oh, it's something that my clients actually pay me for. And the second thing I want to do is I like to generally plant seeds in my market's head that working with me is not just a cheap few $100 thing, which is why I put in pay me four figures for. And then the third thing that this does is it allows people, or it implies to people that this isn't just some webinar or a VSL, which is like a fucking 45-minute pitch fest. This is an actual tangible training that my paying clients pay for. And then I give people a reason as to why I'm doing this. So 2 reasons, once again, I'm not going to go over that again. And then just really wrap it up with, so if you want access to the thing people haven't heard before that has allowed my clients to tangible benefit, tangible result in a specific time frame, then comment IV below and I'll DM you the link. So pretty straightforward call to action. So final piece I'm going to go through is this piece here, which is another example of a more perspective shifting piece. The goal for the reason as to why I wrote this is because I want to start and indoctrinate my audience and shift their perspective on why they should use credit and debt to invest in their business. Because a lot of my client thinks that going into debt is bad, using credit is bad, and things like that. So the way I started this was, who else thinks using credit card or going into debt is bad? I like to use, sometimes I like who else. Same reason I mentioned before, because it implies that they're not the only ones. So it gives them more permission to admit that, because they feel like, oh, well, there's other people who are thinking the same thing. And then the second thing here is talk to a lot of coaches, blah, blah, blah. Biggest advice I could give myself when I was just starting out. One of my favorite things I like to do in my copy, whenever it comes to challenging people's beliefs, is I will gladly take the fall for it, because it means keeping my audience's defenses down. Which is why I like to frame it as if I'm telling myself, but really what I'm doing is I'm coaching my audience, but I'm using myself as an example. Because if I say here, like, biggest advice I can give you, then it's a lot easier for people to raise their defenses and be like, who are you to tell me what to do? So I take the fall, I put it on myself in terms of what I've learned, right? Biggest advice I could give myself when I'm starting out. If you want a business, best thing to do is to act and think like a business and not a consumer. So I'm subconsciously teaching my market on this is how you actually need to think, but I'm wrapping it up in something that I'm telling myself. So then I say, think about the most successful businesses in the world. I like to use really getting people to model the thought patterns and the behaviors that the people they look up to, how they think. And so I'm anchored onto the people that they look up to before I start to really coach my market on how they need to think about credit instead. So this is just really more coaching and anchoring different sizes or different contexts in which people go into debt, to really show people that, hey, you know what, actually, a few $1,000s, which is going to get you a net financial ROI, is nothing compared to these other forms of investment. So investing in your business to grow, it is a big decision, as it can literally change your life. I like to once again go back to meeting my ideal client with where they're at in their head and then putting it back on me. So a large part of me delaying my decision was that I was afraid to use credit because of some random set of money beliefs instilled in me. And I'm once again teaching my ideal client and implying to them, because people are going to be able to relate to this. People are going to be able to relate to the fact that they're scared to use credit because of what society has conditioned them, how society has conditioned us to think in terms of using credit cards and things like that. And then I wrapped it up with the illusion of two choices that my clients or my market can make. And then it's also positioning it in terms of I'm asking myself, if I had to go back and ask myself one important question, it would be this: do I want to do this or do I want to do that? And this goes back to the contrast in decisions that people can make. So you're guiding their thought process and telling them you can choose this or you can choose that. So ultimately, guys, those are really the 4 pieces that I broke down for you guys. Let me know your biggest takeaways. Now, like I said in the beginning, writing copy is one of the most important skills that you can have as a fitness coach if you want to be able to scale your business from having just a few clients a month, whether it's high ticket clients or low ticket, to actually hitting 5 figures. One of the best things that you can do is to learn how to write copy. Because if you get this, then what happens is you get more inbound inquiries, right? More people reaching out to you. You're able to actually position yourself as an authority, as an expert in your space, because nothing kills authority more than shitty copywriting. Okay. And you're going to be able to attract in not just more people, but higher quality people. Because if you can really call out your bullseye market in your copy, and if you can really coach people in the way they need to think, then by the time they reach out to you, they're already sold. So you guys tell me, how good would it be if you were able to double or triple the amount of people reaching out to you? But not just that, the quality of people reaching out to you would be so much higher, and that they're basically 90% bought in by the time they reach out to you. I don't know how much that could add to your revenue, right? But if you're already charging high ticket, then it's probably going to be at least another few thousand a month. So if you want to know how to actually write compelling copy and take your content from just average, from saying the same stuff that every other fitness coach is selling, if you're sick of the price shoppers, sick of attracting cheap people, and if you want to be able to actually write better copy so you can go from average to a fucking savage in your niche, then that's all part of what I teach and what's coming up on the 24th. All right, we start on the 24th. This is specifically for fitness coaches who want to scale to 5-figure months. So if you want more information on that, then hit me up in the DMs. I'll send you more information. But for now, I hope you guys found this helpful, and I will see you guys on the next live. Peace.